talking. Oh. What's up, guys? And we are here today with a brand new show on Bodyslam. It's called Finish the Fight, up in the top. It's a show with me and Rami. Rami is a member of our boxing and MMA coverage team. He occasionally goes into wrestling when I need help, basically. Um, and this is just basically going to be our show, just talking about mixed martial arts, and because it's a sport we love. And there's not really a lot to the podcast, really, other than that. It's just two guys just wanting to talk about sport they love. And um, so this past weekend we had UFC 276. It was a pretty stacked card. Featured the likes of Israel Adesanya, Jared Cannonier, Alex Pereira, and of course the trilogy bout between Holloway and Volkanovski. It did do about 400,000 pay per view buys, which is not the best number, but it's also not the greatest number. And yeah, we're just going to get straight into the fights, guys, because we have a couple of fights to cover today. And first of all, we're going to just go from the main card, and we have also picked out one prelim bout to talk about. And so that fight that we have picked out is Jim Miller versus Cowboy Cerrone. The winner of that fight was going to break the record for the most all-time UFC wins, and Jim Miller did manage to win the fight via submission in the first round. So he did break that record. And on top of that, we also saw Cowboy Donald Cerrone hang up his gloves for the final time. He left his gloves in the octagon with his hat. And he said he'd been planning on this being his last fight for a while, whether it had been Joe Lozon or Jim Miller, as it turned out to be. And so Rami, you lead us into talking about Jim Miller versus Cowboy Cerrone.
I liked it. I liked the fight. Not the, of course, longest fight we'll ever see from those two. They always have to end it either in the first or second. Jim Miller sinking in the guillotine was superb. He's done it before. He's done it on multiple occasions. Every time he's able to sink in that guillotine, he's able to always come away with a win. Donald Cerrone, coming into this fight, had not won since 2019, when his last win was against Al Iaquinta in September. Since then, it's been a bad turn for him in terms of trying to win, trying to get back to the title picture, and what was his goal throughout 2017 and 2018. Going into this fight, all-time leader was on the line, and Jim Miller walked away with it. I saw a lot of people voting for Cowboy Cerrone to walk away and take this because they felt they saw this energy that we had seen in Cerrone in previous years, where he came in there, kicked ass, and took away with a win, whether it be by finish or some decision. I saw it on the other hand. I like Jim Miller. I liked Cowboy Cerrone, but Jim Miller, you can see it in him. He has more years to come to be able to continue fighting. When he goes into any of his fights, he has the desire to go either the distance or go to the ground game and be able to take away with a win. I almost went off topic for a minute. But this fight locks in the guillotine, takes away Cerrone's chance of getting that number 24 to be able to become the all-time leader. I liked it. I liked Cerrone retiring too, whether it be against Joe Lozon or be against Jim Miller. Two legends in the game you can either go against to be able to end off your career. It's perfect. But previously, when he talked about going to the UFC PI, how amazing it was, how much it helped them in his preparation for fights. On the other hand, how he wanted to perform in front of his son, which we did see him give his son a hug before the fight happened. Goes into this fight, he got to perform in front of his son, I believe, about 3 or 4 times now. It's always been a good experience for them, no matter what. I'm glad to see him hang it up. I do not like seeing fighters go into numerous amount of fights, like example Bigfoot Silva, and continue to fight, or Tim Silva continue to fight. You don't have to. It's your career, I understand, but doing all of this for what? Nothing. You have a family. Go take care of yourself. Do what you got to do. I'm happy for Donald Cerrone. It was a legendary career. He went after 2 championships despite being unsuccessful in both. He was still proven to be one of the baddest motherfuckers in the game, and we will, no matter what, appreciate him for what he's done for the sport and for the UFC. Jim Miller, I hope to see him in another fight before the end of the summer, he looked good. He looked like he could easily go in there and just walk away with. He looked like he can go in there and come back next month and the month after if he can be able to get these first round finishes, which he looks like that's the goal to be doing. I'm happy for it. Good fight, a good prelim. The prelims were amazing. From us seeing Sexy Boy from Jessica Rose Clark to seeing Brad Riddell losing to Jalen Turner, who's finally a ranked opponent, to seeing even more fights, we finally got to see the main card, which what started off a little shaky, but as the card turned out, it was a really good card. What were your thoughts on the first bout?
I think when it comes to this fight, there's a lot of sentiment that it would have went differently if it was Joe Lozon. And if anything, I disagree with that statement. Joe Lozon, Jim Miller's a great jiu-jitsu expert. He's great at submissions. He's a dog when it comes to getting, like, he can survive a war, Jim Miller. He's a tough fight. He's basically been the gatekeeper for 155 for a long time now. He's the gatekeeper of the top 15. He's the final boss you're basically going to fight before you become ranked in that division. And it's going to stay that way by the looks of things because even Cowboy now, Cowboy in 2022 is still dangerous. You don't just lose that like ability. Sure, he's slowing down. He's getting older. The damage is adding up. But his techniques and everything were still there, even in that fight. And in terms of how I feel about Cowboy retiring, I feel the same way as you do. I don't like seeing fighters going past. At the end of the day, the only person in the sport, other than Khabib Nurmagomedov, that remains undefeated is Father Time. We all know this. We all know that fighters will tend to want to go out unconscious or choked out. At least Cowboy, like I wouldn't have pegged even Cowboy as one to tap in that situation or anything. And to be honest, like you said, he has a family now. He has a son now, and he has priorities. And stepping away from the sport when you're that close to a record like that, I feel like if he'd gotten that record, it would have been it for him anyway. But a lot of people have said, "Oh, why doesn't he stay fighting? He'd still break that record." But look at Jim Miller versus Cowboy. Jim Miller still looks like he could fight for a couple of years going on. Cowboy doesn't, and we don't want to see him chasing a record that he might never get. Say he's already won behind Miller now. Say they both were fighting at around the same time. All it takes is Miller to get one more win, where Cowboy doesn't, and Cowboy won't be able to catch him. So at the end of the day, I see a lot of people said that in the wake of Cowboy retiring, he still had things he could do, but I think it's more of a case of he realized he can either chase the record, risk getting knocked out brutally, taking years off his career. But yeah, we're going to move on from Cowboy and Miller anyway. We're going to move on to probably the most controversial fight of the card, mainly because a lot of people are trying to suggest that there was no eye poke involved. Sugar Sean O'Malley and Pedro Munoz did fight at UFC 276. It was really considered to be Sugar's big test after getting a few more wins under his belt. And unfortunately, in the second round of the fight, Sean did extend the fingers a little too far and accidentally found them inside of Pedro Munoz's eyeball. And yeah, it's a pretty gruesome picture. If anyone hasn't seen it, if you doubt that it was caused by an eye poke, go and look at the picture. It's not pleasant to look at. But anyway, Pedro Munoz could not continue in the second round after the eye poke. He couldn't see. So the fight was declared no contest. And like I said, there's not a lot to say about this, but I'm going to ask Rami what he thinks. Sugar did have a little bit of a... he did look decent, but I'm going to let Rami say what he feels first.
It was very close. A lot of people want to make it seem like Sugar was getting the advantage in a sense, but it wasn't in that way. Both Munoz and O'Malley were controlling the leg kicks against each other, checking it, attacking, checking, attacking. And a lot of fans and a lot of media people want to be like, oh, it was O'Malley who was taking more of an advantage, taking more of a step into this, which I believe is bullshit. But um, coming into this fight, we saw in the first round the nut strike that O'Malley dished out to him. So in a way, I'm not trying to call O'Malley a dirty fighter because a lot of fighters have had senses where they go for a nut strike by accident because of trying to come after the thigh, or you have eye poke because you're just trying to just extend your hand and your fingers coming away. It's happened with plenty of fighters. But when people go out of the way to say that this was caused by a strike towards the eye, there's difference. You see very big differences when you see like guys like Tyson Fury punch somebody. With those gloves, he's able to cause a bruising towards your face no matter what. But in MMA, these are smaller gloves, just like how Pereira said, and just like how other fighters who have come from kickboxing or boxing to step foot in the octagon have said these are smaller gloves. So when you put that damage on somebody's eye, it's gonna turn out completely different. It's not gonna look like how example Glover Teixeira's eye looked after his bout against John Jones when he was repeatedly eye poked multiple times, despite being dominated. He multiple times where he was eye poked. You look at the eyes and you look how fucked up they are. That's from eye pokes. He extended the fingers the same way other fighters have to be able to eye poke them. Am I saying that it was intentional? No, it's unintentional eye poke. It happened. Munoz couldn't see, how to go to the hospital to get special eye drops to be able to open his eyes up after 20 minutes. That's a serious thing. If people want to think that's excuses, the guy didn't have to go on social media and say any of this. He could have been quiet. He could have accepted a rebooking of this fight and went after this in a more silent manner. He came out, he explained his side. People aren't going to want to believe him, but the truth is that this happened. It's gonna get rebooked. There's no other way around it. Sean O'Malley could say, "Oh, I'm gonna go fight other people," but the thing is, he knows, and everybody knows, no one's gonna take him serious if you go after an eye poke with this fight and you don't go after the rebooking. The same way a lot of people took the situation with Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad. If you're not going to go after the rebooking, then it's hard to take you serious, despite Leon Edwards now going after the championship and Bilal Muhammad being close to it. This fight gets rebooked next month or so. I don't see it going after 2-3 months of them trying to plan a rebooking. There's no need for it. Both fighters didn't take a lot of damage. It was an abrasion that could get resolved in a week or so. And if this rematch does happen, I can see Munoz taking different steps in his game, trying to avoid sway your head more because that was his problem for a minute, trying to sway his head left and right to get away from the strikes that O'Malley was doing because O'Malley is an accurate fighter. And when he lands, we've seen what happened to guys like Thomas Almeida and Rolivan Paiva. They got slept. With this situation, we could see Munoz bounce back because a lot of guys said on the other hand, example, Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan, Sterling was scared. He didn't want to fight Yan, and then he goes into the rematch and he wins in a razor edge fight. We could see this happen with this situation. I would love to see a rematch happen. What are your thoughts?
I think at the end of the day, there is an argument to be made against a lot of commissions have made it so you can't extend your hand like this. You can't straight. You have to have a curve. You can't just go like out like that. You can't do that anymore. That is for a lot of commissions that warrants a point deduction. That's simple. If they're down, that's not an issue. You can do that and you can gauge distance like that. But of course, with fighters who do that, we've seen fighters who have done it plenty. Conor McGregor, for example, when he's trying to gauge distance, he doesn't do it straight like Jones does. He has the hand up. He has the hand up like that, and he's just going like that. So it's not so. I've seen a lot of people make excuses that it's the only way to manage distance, and so for it like that, and that's why John Jones being so long does it. But at the end of the day, there is rules put in place to avert this. But again, it's just another moment of realizing that because of the unified rules aren't actually unified, there's going to be places where referees are less have less power to deduct points. So because if a referee sees straight fingers like that, like with what O'Malley does, O'Malley doesn't gauge like McGregor, or he doesn't have it down. He kind of he has a slight tilt to it when he does it, so it's not a direct. But at the end of the day, it should be unified rules, and until there isn't unified rules, which is probably never going to happen, because no way are all the elect commissions going to agree on one thing or another. But yeah, bringing it back to the fight, Sugar looked decent. Sean looked okay. Like at the end of the day with O'Malley, he doesn't really have a lot of. He doesn't. We saw with Pedro, or not Pedro Munoz, with Chris Moutinho, that O'Malley can style on someone and he won't put them away. He just doesn't have. He doesn't seem to have the power that some bantamweights would have, like Cody Garbrandt. He kind of feels a lot like Holloway, who's a kind of depth by volume kind of person. Um, in terms of Pedro Munoz, I think Pedro Munoz looked fine. Again, there was only one round of actual fighting, and it felt like they were trying to feel each other out for most of that round. Um, so again, but again, I agree with you completely. I feel like you've got to try and rebook this bout in the next month or two, because if you don't, you run the risk of one of the two fighters deciding, you know what, I don't want to fight him again. I'm gonna fight this guy. And with the eye poke and the no contest, at the end of the day, it's not rematches sell. At the end of the day, we know this in MMA. Look at the fact that Diaz McGregor 2 sold way more than Diaz McGregor 1. People want to see a rematch, especially when it's not a uh, definitive result, especially when it's a no contest. Personally, I don't think I don't think it should have been ruled a no contest. I feel like that's a disqualification win for Munoz. I feel like even if it was, they should still have rebooked it. But I feel like a no contest isn't fair to Munoz. Like it's not his fault that O'Malley poked him in the eye. O'Malley shouldn't be extending the way he does. But all in all, when it comes to this topic, I feel like there's not much else you can really say about this fight other than talking about eye pokes, because once again, a big fight, and it is a big fight when it is a big fight. So it gets to a point where what's it going to take? Is it going to take John Jones return to heavyweight where he eye pokes Francis Ngannou till Ngannou can't see him? Is that what it's going to take for this kind of be overhauled? But again, like I said, it doesn't fall on the UFC to do that. It falls on the Athletic Commission. So all in all, for Sugar and Munoz, I'd say, to sum it up, but rebook it. That's all you can really say about that. And
Rebook it.
so after that fight, guys, we got to see the fight of the night. Robbie Lawler and Barberena went 1-on-1, and it was pretty much as violent as everyone expected it to be, with Robbie Lawler being involved. Barberena did come away with the second round knockout. So I'm going to let Rami once again let you lead the way with the Barberena Lawler fight.
For a moment, I thought Barberena was gonna lose, because when Lawler just starts attacking the way that he did, like in his fight against Nick Diaz, it's scary. You get that old school feel to ruthless Robbie Lawler that we saw
He's
against
a
guys like
brawler.
against Carlos Condit and Roy McDonald, like those fights where and even Matt Brown, a former opponent of Brian Barberena, who he defeated previously to get this fight. Barberena comes into this, and we all see that it looks like he might be getting finished towards the first, towards the second, and then all of a sudden the comeback ensues. He goes in for it and he finishes Robbie Lawler. I know it must have broke your heart. For me, as both a Robbie Lawler fan, a Barberena fan, and a fight fan, I was shocked. I was, because we all expect Robbie Lawler to come in here and just go guns blazing, like what you said. He's a brawler, he's a maniac, he's an animal. He just wants to fuck people up, and that's what we get whenever ruthless Robbie Lawler steps into the octagon. And when Brian Barbanera comes out and he's able to power through the strikes that Lawler was dishing out and be able to get the finish, that and that's the thing too. It wasn't even a ranked opponent. His last two wins over Matt Brown and Robbie Lawler aren't ranked opponents. And he's been able to get onto a main card and dominate in a way that we, as fans of the welterweight division and of ranked fighters, want to see happen more. I was previously going to mention, oh, he should initially fight Carlos Condit next. You know, three welterweight greats. Why not fight them? Not knowing that Carlos Condit is not even in the UFC anymore, and me being the dumbass that I kind of am. So looking into it at the welterweight rankings, his next opponent, if he decides to go after the number 15 spot, would be against Michel Pereira. And we all know how Pereira fights. That man loves to do backflips, loves to fly off the cage, and he loves to sink in the most wildest chokes that we can possibly see. Another fight that he can possibly get will be against Li Jingling, who fought against Khamzat Chimaev, despite not
That's a
coming away.
good fight.
Despite not coming away with a win, he's a power striker. He's a fighter who can stand toe to toe with Brian and be able to go and dish it out. Jeff Hands of Steel Neal is another opponent that we can talk about. He fought Stephen Thompson. A lot of people didn't want to, give him credit for it, but he withstood the leg kicks, the head kicks, the strikes, everything to be able to come out there and still survive towards the fifth round and towards the decision where it was initially awarded to Thompson because of, how dominant
Yeah.
he was, which I didn't expect that to happen in my words. Neil Magny, who recently lost to Shavkat in that second round submission with last 2 seconds on the line. He could be a fighter for Brian Barbanera to fight. There's so many fighters for Barbanera to fight. Robbie Lawler is unranked. And no dissing towards him. He's an amazing fighter. I will never ever diss him in my life.
Never.
Never. But he is a good step for Barbanera to go into the welterweight division. So was Matt Brown. Giving Barbanera a ranked opponent next is what we need to see. Because I get it, another ranked opponent that is a initial UFC Hall of Famer legend would be cool, but ranked opponents lead to championship bouts. And I want to see this man break into the top 10 and into the top 5. And I want to see him go after the championship. His spirit is great. The way he carries himself is nice. And coming after a comeback fight against Robbie Lawler, no, not a lot of men can be able to do that. And people who have tried to do that weren't so successful in their attempt to do it. What were your thoughts on it, and where do you see this heading to next?
To be honest, like again, I'm with fighters like Robbie Lawler. It's really hard to tell when it's time for them to hang it up. Like we were talking about Cowboy earlier. Um,
Two good friends and two opponent fighters who have fought each other too.
but I also feel like we're not going to see Robbie Lawler. To me, I don't ever see him retiring from MMA until he's forced to. That's just the guy he is. Like you don't. He loves it when it gets like it did last on Saturday. I bet he loved the violence. I bet he loved the fight. The fight, other than the fact he lost, of course. Do I think that's the it for him? Not even close. A lot of people are calling for it, especially in the wake of Cowboy retiring. But again, Barberena is a legitimate top 15 fighter at this point. Like you said, Michel Pereira would be a good fight. Um, I think the fact that he survived the onslaught that Robbie put on him, because like you said, when Robbie Lawler puts on the pressure, he puts on the bloody pressure. Like he will drag you into the waters. He will put your back against the fence, and he will tee off on you if you give him that chance. And that's what Barberena basically did. So, in terms of what's next for Barberena, I don't even know if a ranked opponent is next for Barberena. I would love to see him fight Gunny Nelson. I would love
Nice.
to see Gunny fight Barberena. I think Gunny is at this point the welterweight gatekeeper. and it would be a great test to see what Barberena can do on the ground. Because in Gunny's last fight, he completely controlled his opponent. He didn't get the sub, but he spent about 11 minutes in back control. So he like I'd like to see Barberena fight him first before he gets a ranked opponent. But if he got a ranked opponent, I definitely wouldn't complain. I would understand completely why he would, and I would probably book him. And if I was the matchmaker too, I just love the idea of Barberena versus Gunny Nelson. I think Gunny needs a big fight again. He's got his return fight out of the way, and Gunny is another talent that is a top 15 welterweight. He had a long time out, and he won his first fight back. So I would love to see them two square off. But like we said earlier, you can't really predict what they're going to do with these hot prospects. Look at what happened with Ponzinibbio when they tried to push him too fast in the welterweight division. You really need to be careful in these divisions with these prospects, because 155, 170, they're two deepest divisions in the sport. Yeah, we both agree on that.
I can agree with that.
If you look what happened to Darren Till, again, he had to move up to middleweight because he couldn't make the weight, but he got fed to Woodley way before he was ready. He got fed to Wonderboy before he was ready, and he actually lost that fight, but, hometown judges and so forth. Yeah, so in general, I there's not a lot to say about that fight. I think it went where everyone thought it would go. We all got the brief moment where we thought Robbie was going to pull it out, but yeah, I don't think there's much else to say about that fight. I think he does have a lot of promising fights possibly available. In terms of Robbie, I honestly don't even know what's next for him. Maybe I want to suggest a fight, but I don't see it being booked. I'd love to see Nate fight Robbie.
It would be that would be a good fight, because so many fighters have stepped up to fight Nate, and it just won't happen for some reason. Like, either Nate
They need
is
to give Nate his last
declining,
fight.
either Nate's declining, like they're saying, or they're just not fully inking the deal, because guys like Steven Wonderboy have stepped up. Robbie Lawler has stepped up. Dustin Poirier have stepped up. Every one of even fucking Khamzat Chimaev has stepped up to say, I want to fight Nate. I don't care if he's ranked or not. It's a fight against Nate Diaz, which could easily be a co-main event or main event of a fight night or a pay-per-view. And it's a 5-round war that we get between the Stockton badass and one of these top fighters or legends. And hopefully we're able to see Nate Diaz fight too, because, oh my goodness.
In a 5-round fight, even at this stage in his career, I would not count Nate out against anyone in 170 or 155. Anyone.
Because look at Rocky Edwards towards that last minute of the 5th round
again,
when he stunned him.
He didn't just stun him, mate. Let's be real. He put him on chicken legs. And the people are always like, Nate doesn't have power. If Nate lands that 1-2 combo, I don't care who you are, you're going to be on spaghetti legs for at least a minute. Because he did it to Connor, he did it to Leon, he did it to Pettis. I don't know what it is about his 1-2. He just has such a crisp 1-2. And we're getting off topic like crazy here. But yeah, just to sum up basically that whole conversation, book Nate Diaz. So we'll move on to a fight that was actually one of the fights I was looking most forward to, specifically because I can't stand one of them, and I knew it was going to end ugly. Sean Strickland fought Alex Pereira, and pretty much went the way everyone assumed it would go, unless Sean implemented wrestling. In his last fight, he did say that he was disappointed in his performance and he didn't want to wrestle. He wanted to put on an exciting fight. So he decided to do that. And unfortunately for him, he decided to walk down a world-class kickboxer with his hands low. And Pereira blasted his ass to the Shadow Realm, and now he's in the top 6 in the middleweight division and probably on his way to a title shot. But I'll go back into that a little more after Rami shares his thoughts on the fight.
Hold on a minute. I'm getting some technical difficulties. I'm out. It was lagging for a second, so I was
Yeah,
confused.
yeah, you're
Um,
all good.
well, did you ask me about the Pereira Strickland, right?
Yeah. Jamie, our producer Jamie clearly does not like your glasses.
It's still
I can hear you.
those
Yeah,
glasses are
it's
difficulties. No, it's lagging for me. I don't know because it keeps going in and out.
okay. Well, while you're trying to fix your technical difficulties, I'll just take over for now on the fight, and I'll throw it to you now in a moment. But yeah, so all in all, with this
I
fight,
cannot hear anything.
yeah, you're. Oh, well, now I'm alone. We're just gonna wait really quickly. So talk a little bit about Sean Strickland and Alex Pereira fighting. Pereira, of course, did knock out Strickland in the first round, and a lot of fans were happy about that. A lot of fans don't like Sean Strickland, and I was going to mention this with Rami. I'll mention it again when he joins back. But Pereira has Pereira's nickname is Portuguese for hands of stone, and you don't get a nickname like that without having serious knockout power. And Strickland, I rarely advocate for a wrestle heavy game unless is someone like Khabib who will just smash anyone on the ground. But you can't walk down a kickboxer of Pereira's skill and power and not have your hands up. I don't understand it. In what universe did he think that that was a good idea? Because honestly, to me, it looks like probably the worst decision anyone could make with regards to fighting someone as dangerous as Pereira. But it looks like your technical difficulties are resolved, so I will pass it over to you, Rami.
Technical difficulties. These glasses, man, they're doing things. Um, Strickland said before this fight happened that, in his words, I could fight any glory light heavyweight kickboxer or heavyweight and kick their ass. Nobody can stand a chance against me. You stand toe to toe with Sean Strickland, and you're gonna get finished. In his words, we saw Saturday Night came where he was ignoring his opponent throughout the press conference week and throughout media, constantly mocking their fight style, the way that their stances, the way they throw strikes, everything. He even said, "Hell, I could even wrestle if I wanted to." And coming into this fight, I thought, okay, we're gonna see some Sean Strickland fucking wrestling. Okay, he's gonna take down Alex Pereira. He's gonna dominate the game potentially, and it's gonna be just one-sided affair where Strickland finally gets that championship bout. And that's not what we saw. Instead, Alex Pereira, who was quiet throughout a lot of media day, he said some things here, but mostly translated it was like small words. Mostly his manager was talking for him, not himself. So coming into this fight and during press conference, quiet as a mouse, not making a single noise, and then we see him land that beautiful left that sleeps Strickland for zero point 0.5 seconds. He gets back up,
And then nearly falls flat on his face.
delivers the killing blow, and finishes Strickland. Strickland gave his respect afterwards to Pereira, but it goes to show you, don't don't
Don't
go and
stand.
say I'm gonna go stand toe to toe with a kickboxer, especially a guy like Alex Pereira. The guy's a killer. The only
There's
reason why
no,
he left kickboxing was because he ran out of opponents. And when they finally gave him an opponent and he lost the championship to them, he said, I go after this rematch. What's the point? I'm going to go to MMA and see how well I do there. Because we've seen guys like Okan Saki go into the MMA with the UFC and not have a fair share of success. We see Alex Pereira go into this and he's dominant. Yes, his last two fights weren't against ranked opponents, which people had a little problem with,
still won them.
saying why should he go after the championship. It's also for the simple fact that it's a kickboxing legend coming to MMA and accepting a fight against the number 4 ranked guy in Sean Strickland and winning in stunning first round fashion. I expected a finish from either
Yeah.
man because Strickland has power. I'm not gonna downplay that at all. He has his power, but Pereira, all it takes is that left, it seems. And once he lands that left, it's over. It's game over for any of his opponents, whether it be in kickboxing or mixed martial arts. I'm sure you gave a lot of your thoughts on this fight and where you see probably this heading to
I
the
think
future.
we all know where it's heading, to be fair.
I'm gonna speak about where it's heading to for Strickland. I think he should fight in a sense because this is middleweight. You got to fight somebody. You got to fight one of the top 5 people. Here are 3 opponents he could fight that make a lot of sense. Cannonier, who's coming off, who we know, we'll talk about that later. Cannonier could be a good opponent for him to fit into this because Cannonier has this power. Cannonier doesn't like to wrestle. Strickland wants to put wrestling into his game. And who knows? These guys might go into the clinch, start dogging on each other, and put out a pretty good fight that we could at least remember about rather than a main event. But another fighter that he could easily go against too would be the winner or the loser of the UFC Paris main event between Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori. Both men want to go after the championship, and they're making this main event huge. Marvin Vettori says that he can go after the champion at any go, even though he's lost the last 2 fucking fights against them.
They're
Robert
both.
Whittaker, go on.
You go on. No, you go. You go. I interrupted you. Go.
No worries. Robert Whittaker, of course, lost that first fight in the second round. We saw him have a better game in the second fight despite losing on the outcome. I feel like either the winner or the loser of that fight, Cannonier, Strickland, can go against either of those men, and it still keeps them around in the title picture because once the next fight is over with, whichever way that the next middleweight championship fight goes, we could be seeing if Strickland gets back into his groove, him going after the championship. Do you have any other thoughts about this?
I think, to be honest, when it comes to like, I honestly, that UFC Paris main event, I wouldn't even say the loser. I'd say the winner of that fight Strickland next, because as you said, Vittori's lost twice, Whitaker's lost twice, so they're both the loser of that fight. They have a lot of work to do, so it's a really dangerous fight for both of them. Whoever loses that fight might have to leave the division. That's how big that fight could be. I think that with terms it, like, we'll talk about Izzy in a bit, but with Strickland and Pereira, Pereira has an obvious route. Again, we'll talk about that later. Strickland finds himself in a hard spot because no matter who he takes a fight against next, he's got to take a ranked opponent because he just took someone who was unranked and got blasted by them. This could be really bad for Strickland if it goes wrong. I honestly would like to see Robbie Lawler move up the middleweight and fight Alex Pereira because there's not a lot of danger in that fight for Lawler. And Lawler did fight at middleweight for a while, and it probably would help him out with his longevity if he doesn't have to do that welterweight cut every couple of months. But yeah, in terms of that fight, again, we'll come back to that fight in a little bit because, again, we have to talk about the main event before talking about that. So we will move on to the co-main event, to a fight that literally broke my heart as Alex Volkanovski, for his third time, beat Max Holloway by decision. And for a little bit about what I think about this fight first. Max, going into this fight, I was picking Max all day, every day. Max was going to win. Max was going to win. Max was going to find Volkanovski out, and he just couldn't keep up with Volk. Volk was faster. He had more power. He just seemed to be in a different world to Max Holloway. And that is an incredible feat because, as we both know, Max Holloway, in his 2 fights since last fighting Volkanovski, he's put on 2 of the best performances in featherweight history. And the crazy part is like the difference that Max landed against Volk in this fight versus what he landed against Ortega, what he landed against Korean Zombie, or not Korean Zombie, against Cater. against Yair. Like he couldn't land. He just couldn't engage without getting lit up or tagged. And credit to Max's chin as well, because Volk did hit a lot of shots. But all in all, to be honest, with that fight, I have no idea what's next for Volk. Lightweight title is on the horizon for him, but in terms of legitimate defenses at featherweight, there's no clear number one contender. Josh Emmett maybe, but do we really think Josh Emmett is going to give him much problems right now? I feel like that's the same as booking him against Korean Zombie. It's just feeding a lamb to the slaughter. So again, with featherweight, I'm not really sure. I think the only option for him is to move up in weight. And considering the way lightweight is at the moment, Oliveira versus Volk for the vacant belt, I don't think there's anything else you can really do. Because the title is currently vacant. The next fight in that top five needs to be for the belt. So Volk broke his hand against Max in the first round. So I imagine he's going to be out for some time with that. But once he's back, I feel like they need to book that fight as soon as possible. But I'm going to pass it over to you now, Rami, and give me your thoughts on that crazy co-main event.
I was sad. The more blows that Max took, I'm like, man, this man has the strongest chin I've ever seen. He didn't get dropped. I don't think he got dropped at all.
No,
He just took a
still hasn't
lot
been
of
dropped in his
damage.
UFC career.
I'm shocked. I don't know what that was in that man's jaw, but he better keep it in. But with the featherweight division, Volkanovski's a monster. I don't know. I like Max a lot. Of course, I'll always say that. I didn't understand when he was saying that Volkanovski doesn't do damage to his opponents. Like he says, Max was saying that I dish out opponents. Volk is known for not dishing out damage to his opponents. But the thing is this: look at this fight against Korean Zombie between Volk and TKZ, and look at Volk and look at TKZ's face after that fight. Look at Brian Ortega's face after the fight. When they fought each other, those faces got fucked up. Those faces looked fucking brutalized. Volk has shown power. Volk has shown speed. He's a scary motherfucker. His next goal, hold on. His next goal, he says, is to rehab his hand to make sure that's all well before his next fight. He's eyeing only 3 fighters, and 2 of them are fighting in Long Island, New York, I believe next month or the following of this end of the month, between Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. Those 2 he is eyeing. He says the winner of that with an impressive victory would be able to fight me for the championship once I'm all healed and done. Also, Josh Emmett could come into the picture after his very close win over Calvin Kattar, which I had Calvin Kattar winning on my card. I did not see Kattar coming into this. Emmett coming into this and doing anything big, but he did. He got the win. He got an opportunity to face for the championship potentially next. But if Volkanovski does decide to move up to lightweight, the championship is vacated. All the surrounding rumors around this have been Islam Makhachev versus Charles Oliveira for the championship in either Abu Dhabi in September or October, or having it happen in January for Brazil whenever Oliveira is healed. I feel personally they should wait it out and have in Abu Dhabi Islam versus Charles Oliveira. It builds up a big fight between the two. It's championship bout exactly. And Charles Oliveira, I know his nickname is the Bronx. I love that nickname. It's killer. It's thuggish. But I love a lot of the nicknames that people also give him a Moon Knight. The man gets dropped in the first minute of the fight, and all of a sudden it clicks in his head. He bounces back and he finishes the fight with either a knockout or a submission. He has not led it to decision in quite some time. He goes against Volkanovski, and who knows what we'll see, because we've seen him fight against former what do you call it, lightweight stars in other divisions.
Mm.
Example, Michael Chandler. We've seen him fight former featherweights like Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, who walks around like a middleweight at this point, and he's finished all those guys. Volkanovski has dominated the featherweight division. A win over either Rodriguez, Emmett, or Ortega solidifies himself as one of already the best, as he already is. But him going up to lightweight, I want to see it happen, but not just yet. It can't. I don't want to see it for the vacant championship. The last time I believe that fight happened was Henry Cejudo going against Marlon Moraes for the vacant bantamweight championship after TJ was popped and had to do 2 years because of a suspension. Um, we all know that Cejudo walked away with the championship and then afterwards retired following a victory over Dominic Cruz. With this situation, I want to see a full championship and a full champion. And I know that Charles Oliveira, despite everyone pulling for Islam, specifically Khabib and other UFC legends, feeling that Islam has the edge over Charles. Charles hasn't lost in about 3-4 years. The man doesn't want to lose, and he's not going to lose. He wins in Abu Dhabi. If he wins it by a quick submission win in the first or second, like he's known to do for, have it booked in January of Volkanovski versus Oliveira in Brazil. Everybody would love that more than anything. What would be your thoughts on that happening and about the featherweight and lightweight title pictures?
I think, to be honest, you kind of nailed it on the head with that booking. I really wouldn't change anything that you said with that. I already really said everything I've said about the fight. Volk was just too good for Max. On again, like at the end of the day, Max is 3-0 now against them. It will take a lot for him to get back to the title at 145 if he decides to stay there. Right, I think he might decide to move up to 155 with Volk. But yeah.
Max
So
versus
moving on. What?
sorry to interrupt you. Max versus Volk at lightweight. If they would ever set up a fourth fight, oh my goodness, my emotions would still be all over the place. I would still have Max Holloway
Probably.
winning that.
Probably, Sam. But originally we were going to leave honorable mentions till after the main event, but I think it's probably a better idea to get them out of the way now. So for me, my honorable mention, I think what we should do is maybe just before we cover main events on post, like when we're talking about cards, maybe just before the main event, we can kind of put an honorable mention to a prelim fight that each of us liked. So I'll give you a quick moment to think about that. But as you know, I have mine. Ian Gary had his second fight in the UFC, and he was like everyone kind of agreed with the same sentiment that he showed a lot that we didn't get to see in his first fight. He got hit a lot in his first fight in the UFC. This time out, he was slipping and ripping brilliantly. His striking was great. He just styled on him at the end of the day. So Ian Gary is definitely my honorable mention from this card. And I'd like to throw it over to you for your honorable mention, Rami.
The 45-second man, Jalen Turner, getting that guillotine choke on Brad Riddell was astonishing. Over a ranked opponent. Jalen should have had a ranked opponent in his last fight. They didn't give it to him. Now he finally got one. And because of that, today they just announced that Jalen Turner is now number 14 ranked in the UFC lightweight rankings. It's beautiful. It's good. The 45-second man sinking in that after rocking Brad, sinking in that choke, and just the way he just got on top of the man, just to compose himself, get the posture, and the fight all in under a minute. Beautiful. That man, I'm a huge fan of. I can't wait to see his next fight. I want to see him on the main card. I want to be able to see that man on a pay-per-view main card, opening it up and against another lightweight ranked opponent that he could very well defeat, and we could see good things from. Where is this man sending us as well? What do you but on our way to the main event?
Yeah, the main event was Israel Adesanya versus Jared Cannonier. Izzy cruised to a pretty easy decision. I don't think there's a lot to really talk about with regards to the fight itself. It was just a good performance from Izzy. He didn't let Jared get too close to him at any point. it wasn't what a lot of people have suggested it was. It's not like it was the Romero fight where Izzy just didn't want to engage. He was engaging, he just was being smart about it and respecting Jared's power. All in all, it just reminded me of Anderson Silva yet again. Just an absolute clinic of a striking performance. Showed off a little, but like at the end of the day, he's chasing that record. And to be honest, I don't blame the guy. He's been compared to Anderson since he debuted in the promotion. He's beaten Anderson. He's I don't know how many title defenses that makes now. I think it's 4 or 5, and maybe 5. And so, with regard to the fight itself, not really a lot to say about it other than Izzy just did what Izzy does best, and that's just style on people in the middleweight division. I don't know what we know what the next opponent's going to be for Izzy. We both know. We both mentioned it earlier. Alex Pereira, last dude to knock Izzy out unconscious in his kickboxing career. And he actually, a lot of people don't realize this, but Pereira is actually 2-0 over Izzy in kickboxing. And the first fight went to a decision, which Pereira, of course, was awarded. And then the second fight is the thing is as well that people don't like this to recognize is in that fight that Izzy got knocked out in, he was comfortably winning the kickboxing bout. So it's not as simple as Pereira knocked him out, he's going to do it again. If Izzy can stay at range against Alex Pereira, I don't see why he can't continue what he was doing in that last kickboxing fight and just do what he did against Cannonier. He's clearly matured. He doesn't leave his chin in the air like he did in that fight. And to be honest, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's probably the biggest fight in middleweight history in a long time. In a long, long time. Basically since GSP took the title. Rob was a great champion, don't get me wrong. But when Izzy stepped up, Izzy is that star in that division. Yeah, the pay-per-view only did 400K. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of people in the sport that can draw more than 200,000. And Izzy's one of them. So, to be honest, all in all in that fight, my thoughts on it, just perfection from Izzy. Nothing really else to say about it. And pass it on to you, Rami. Give us your thoughts, what you think is next for both, and then we'll get to our outro.
Well, first, I wanted to mention beforehand, we saw the McMahon family and Triple H, Pat McAfee, Octagon side. And then minutes later, after the promos for the main event, Adesanya coming out with the Undertaker style entrance. That was 10 out of 10. A lot of people they make the jokes of, wow, he did really make us rest in peace with that fight. And
I made that joke.
I saw that and I was like shaking my damn head. Okay, buddy. But Adesanya, just the way you explained it, came into this fight like Anderson Silva. Not a lot of people like Anderson Silva's fights. No, we like a good amount of his fights against, example, Forrest Griffin, against Vitor Belfort, against guys that he knocked out, guys that he finished, Chael Sonnen twice. But his fight against Damian Maia, I mentioned that to any MMA fan, and they're gonna want to put their head down and say, "I never want to watch that fight again." It was the most boring fight you could ever watch. But we still love Anderson Silva. He's still in our eyes a legend and a god of the MMA world. But that's what Adesanya did. Adesanya landed 50% of his strikes significant. He came into this fight with the goal in hand of, yes, I want to finish, but if I can't get the finish, why not outpoint my opponent like a boxer would or like any other fighter? GSP was such a legend with it. His jab, he only used his left jab against Josh Koscheck in their second fight, and that's what won him the fight. Just a constant left jab throughout 5 rounds. If Izzy can do that, if GSP can do that, Adesanya can do that. A lot of fighters can do that. We've seen many fighters use the outpointing system to their advantage. Adesanya walked away with the win after in a way, intriguing matchup. His fight, which we'll most likely see now against Alex Pereira, the first fight, everybody's comments were, he shouldn't have let it go into the judges scorecards, like what everybody says whenever it comes to a decision. We've said that about Masvidal, Covington, and about many other example Volkanovski, Holloway too. It shouldn't have gone to the judges scorecards. But here, I went off topic for a minute. But here is where we saw Pereira going to the second fight with Izzy trying to go after the finish, and he fucked up. Yeah, he rocked Pereira, and everyone saw it almost as a finish. But when Pereira bounced back and got the finish, that's where we saw everybody say, "Oh, well, Izzy will never be able to finish him." But now it's mixed martial arts, and what Izzy has said is he wants to implement true mixed martial arts to his future opponent, Alex Pereira, in their first MMA bout, third overall fight. I don't know how this fight can go. If it does get booked, I can't predict it because Pereira, what he did to Strickland, was scary enough. If he can see Adesanya with his hands down, and it's not the same gloves they use in Glory, it's the gloves they use in MMA, it's going to be lights out for Izzy. And I like Izzy. He has a strong jaw. He has he has durability. He showed that against Kelvin Gastelum. He showed that against, in a sense, his fight against Romero, when Romero would explode, and he was caught a couple of times, but he was able to survive out of it. Adesanya will have to do everything to train for this fight, and he already knows that. I don't have to tell him that at all. He knows that he's gonna have to train twice as hard, just to be able to fully understand and fully prepare for what he's gonna be dealing with, especially in a 5-round fight, where if you go to the ground game, you might have a slight advantage, but every fight starts standing. So if Pereira can catch him with one slipping, it could be lights out for Adesanya, and we could all say the same thing that we've been saying, which is Pereira is better than Adesanya. But what are your thoughts, or are you okay with just ending it at that?
I think, just as a quick thing, like I think that Izzy, I think that people are drastically underestimating Pereira's on the ground skills. Like he's not a novice. He's got decent jiu-jitsu. He's got decent defensive jiu-jitsu. We saw that in his first UFC fight. He got took down. He took the punishment, and then he got a flying knee KO. So I definitely don't think that if Izzy decides to wrestle, I don't think that means he's going to win. I think that Pereira could end up actually causing him problems off his back. But yeah, all in all, that's UFC 276 all covered, all talked about. We've put our opinions out there. So no MMA fans, if they come across us, I'm sure they'll be completely rational. But that is basically everything we have. If you guys are watching this on Bodyslam's YouTube, we do have a brand new Twitter for Bodyslam MMA. You can find it at BodyslamNet MMA on Twitter. And I don't know if we have a Facebook page yet. Our producer might put it there if we do or if we don't. But we do have our Twitter. You can follow Rami, as you can see. Who else but Rami? His glasses are cringy, but he's a cool dude. You can follow me at Corey Brennan, at Corey Brennan BS, and you can follow both of us who's pretty much stealing both of our jobs. Brady at Death Triangle in all caps. And yeah, that's really all that we. Our next episode will probably be around some. It won't probably. It probably won't be anything to do with a card because it's a couple of fight nights before we get another pay-per-view. But yeah, when we do get to another pay-per-view, guys, we will have another recap, probably a preview as well. And yeah, so I'm gonna let Rami say bye to you guys and plug whatever he wants, and then that will be all she wrote for the first episode of Finish the Fight. Oh wait, that way, there.
Follow me on Twitter at Rami. I stream almost daily. It's great.
And that's it. Deuces.